We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. For many, it's a playground. For others, it's where we earn our living. But the sea's unpredictable. It can change in an instant. And when accidents happen, they happen very fast.
On the sea, you have to expect the unexpected. It will just turn around and bite you.
Mayday! Mayday! Help!
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of nearly 5,000 ordinary people.
When the pager goes off, we don't know what the shout is, where it is, how many people are involved. It could be anything.
Where do you feel the pain, Alex?
My back of my leg and my neck.
Stuart, just hold the boat!
I am so thankful that they came.
Things could have turned out to be a lot worse.
I've had people drown in front of me. Before we've got there, that person's gone.
Calm down, you're okay, pal.
Equipped with their own cameras,
My light flashing. That's mine.
the crews give us a unique insight into every call-out as only they see it. Speeding through the roughest weather, searching for people who may only have moments to live. For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
The decisions we make on a lifeboat, it can all mean the difference between life or death.
The sea, sands and rocky shores around the coast of the UK and Ireland are a magnet for pleasure seekers. From the bucket and spade brigade to an army of extreme sports enthusiasts. Nowhere more so than here in Torbay on the south coast of Devon.
In terms of the marine users that we have in Brixham and Torbay, there's a couple of marinas, so there's lots of pleasure boats, so lots of yachts and speedboats. It's a bit of a hive of activity.
The summer season in Brixham kicks off in May with one of their busiest weekends of the year.
The atmosphere around Brixfest is normally really sort of a party type atmosphere. People are around the harbour side. It's a great day out and good entertainment.
As well as the crowds in town, a sailing regatta fills the bay with pleasure craft.
The sight that you see when looking out across Torbay, whether it be modern sailing boats or the historical heritage sailing boats, it's a fantastic sight to see, and you wouldn't get it anywhere else in the world.
I'd gone down with my family to look at the heritage boats. We popped into the lifeboat station and I heard over the VHF radio a female voice say the word Mayday.
You pick me up, I'll get the anti-locks, mate.
A Mayday distress call means a life-threatening emergency at sea. The D-class lifeboat is on the water in 3 minutes.
Got it, okay.
The only information the crew have is that someone somewhere in the bay needs urgent medical attention.
I knew that we needed to get out there quickly. The problem was I didn't know where there was.
As we round the end of breakwater, keep an eye out for any boats, anybody waving, all right? Because they're not quite sure where they are at the moment, all right?
The problem is the casualties boat could be anywhere in the 3 square miles of the bay.
It was a very busy day on the water, lots of boats, lots of people taking part in the sailing regatta, so actually pinpointing the individual casualty was quite difficult.
It's Torbay inshore lifeboats, channel 16, over.
As we were making way, I was on the radio trying to extract any more information that we could.
2 yachts collided.
It was apparent that there'd been some sort of collision.
2 boats over there.
As we came clear of the breakwater, a couple of the heritage boats were sort of pointing us in the right direction.
Yeah, I can see you on our boat. We'll be with you in 30 seconds.
5 minutes after launching, they spot one of the boats involved in the collision. An injured man is lying prone on the deck.
So Coast Guard Torbay will be with the casualty. Let's get on board with the intel, mate. Let's see what we've got. Right, I'll go here. Okay? Yeah. Don't mind me, you keep steering us ashore. Yeah. How you doing, okay? I've got some pain relief for you.
Oh, good.
Can I just get round there?
I've got my thumb on his femoral.
Oh, have you?
Do you want me to let
it's
go?
bleeding out, is he? All right. All right, let me come round. I'll get round the back.
The casualty has suffered severe trauma to his lower leg and is bleeding heavily.
Where are you actually bleeding from? Is it just your ankle? Yeah. OK.
I didn't realise quite how serious the injury was until I asked the casualty if he could elevate his leg to stem the blood flow.
Too much pain? OK.
Well, foot's loose. Both bones gone.
Yeah, OK.
He said to me that he wasn't able to do that because really all that was holding his foot on was the skin and the tissue. His foot had been pretty well all but amputated.
Can you get hold of Coast Guard, tell the injury is the leg has separated and there is bleeding and would go to the ferry pontoon.
The collision has severed 2 arteries in the casualty's lower leg. All that's preventing fatal blood loss is the pressure being applied by his crewmate. It's keeping him alive, but it's also cutting off the blood supply to his foot.
This injury was severe and could be potentially life-changing, and it really escalated the assistance that we needed and the medical care that we needed to give the casualty the best opportunity possible.
The coxswain has best access. The lifeboat pontoon would be the best possible place to the ambulance. I repeat, the lifeboat pontoon.
Usually the crew would transfer the casualty into the faster lifeboat to get him to medical help as quickly as possible.
My concern with moving him was that he could basically lose the foot.
Yeah.
His foot was barely still attached. So that was part of my decision making to leave him where he was, and the boat would motor in with him on board.
Unwilling to risk moving him, Ray must keep the casualty stable for the journey back to shore on the slower yacht.
Put it in there and take a nice deep breath. Right, what we'll do is take you on our pontoon.
The casualty, 66-year-old James, had been sailing with his friend Clive and wife Sally when the 2 boats collided.
It was almost like slow motion. I could just see this boat had a huge, long bowsprit on it, and it was just coming closer and closer and closer. But then suddenly, it seemed to accelerate, and then it went straight into the boat.
Yeah.
All I could see was just sort of blood and his foot and leg underneath just sort of lying at a completely distorted angle. And I just screamed.
Right, what we'll do is...
I screamed from Clive because I knew that Clive, with his naval training, would know what to do.
And it'll be very easy to get you off there.
I could see that the bowsprit, that's the round pole at the front of the boat, had gone through his leg and then had carried on and was halfway across the inside of the boat. And it was still resting on the last bit of skin at the bottom of his leg.
I was helming back and I was shaking, completely shaking, so my whole focus was on helming the boat, keeping it in a straight line and making for the RNLI station. I had enough confidence at that point in Clive that he was doing the right thing.
I knew that I had 2 things to do. One was to put a bandage round his foot to stop it falling off. And I knew I had to stop the bleeding, otherwise we wouldn't make it back to the lifeboat station in time. I knew at that time, it was a couple of minutes of dying.
If you can, Rob, aim to get the boat alongside that black fender there, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, where the casualty is.
Right, OK. James, we're coming alongside the lifeboat pontoon. Right. We're going to try and bring it this side too.
This side, OK.
Yeah, if there's any doubt, we're going to stop.
We're coming alongside, we don't want it in too tight, right? Because the casualty's just down here.
20 minutes after the collision, they make it back to harbour, only to discover the ambulance they were expecting to meet them is still fighting its way through the festival traffic.
The vessel is alongside Lifeboat pontoon, as well as ourselves. Have you got an update on the ETA of the ambulance, please, Eva?
Negative at this time. We'll confirm and get back to you as soon as possible.
They must keep James stable until it arrives. But every minute his severed foot is left with no blood supply increases the risk he may lose it.
Okay.
Yeah?
That's fine.
Yeah, right about that. Where is the ambulance, mate?
They're trying to find an update for me. I haven't got time on it, mate.
I take it this is your wife, is it?
Yeah.
So what's your name, my love?
Sally.
Sally. If we can take Sally back to the boat, I'll just make her a cup of tea, please.
Yeah. Darling, please don't worry. Danny, I love you too. Don't worry. I'm fine.
Done.
I'm in good hands.
He won't be going anywhere without you, don't worry.
I was led to go to the RNLI house, but I was still shaking and still in shock. And then they said that they weren't going, they weren't going to lie and say it was all right, that it was serious, and that, they thought that he might lose his leg at that point.
Yeah, my leg is literally hanging off.
Don't worry. We'll do the work. You just lie still.
I think he's here now.
5 minutes after mooring at the pontoon, the paramedics arrive.
This is James. James is a bit of a mess.
I'm in trouble, yeah. I had a bowsprit drive straight through my leg, I'm afraid.
Do we want to get the legs together or not?
It's not held on with very much.
No. It's only on with a little bit of skin.
I'll keep breathing if I were you. Trust me.
With James's condition critical, there's no time to risk the traffic getting him to hospital. An air ambulance is called in. The next problem is how to get him off the boat without further damaging his foot.
You want to try someone just lift him?
Okay, I've got the stern here, so you can pull it.
Have a twist.
The adrenaline was wearing off. I think the bit of the shock was wearing off, and he realised that he was now in pain.
Has he had any morphine yet?
No, yeah, we need to make sure that
Can he have some more interlocks then, before we move him?
I think one of the key things is not to show, if you possibly can, that what you're seeing is quite horrific, because that way the casualty remains calm.
Okay, on three. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Right. Keep still, mate. Keep still. Okay, keep going. Perfect.
Well done, team.
Hello, James. My name's Nick. This is my colleague Adrian in the other red pyjamas. We're going to look after you, get you down to hospital. All right? How's it looking down there, buddy? Has it bled lots? Yeah, bled lots, hasn't it? Well, at least 2 guys. Have a little look if there's any sort of pulse. It looks a bit dusky, mate, is all I'm looking at.
The fact that they couldn't find any blood supply at the top of his foot, coupled with the fact that both his bones had been smashed, the worst case for this casualty was still losing his foot.
One hour after the collision, James is flown to a specialist trauma hospital in Plymouth, 26 miles away, where he's rushed into emergency surgery.
I looked down and could see something I don't really like to remember, which was broken bones, my leg all at an angle, 2 arteries spurting blood and bits of, skin and bone all over the place, and thought, not good. It's a bit like your leg being blown off by a cannonball, in fact, and that's what the naval doctors in Derriford Hospital said. Oh, we got a Nelson job here. I was in pain, but I was able to think past the pain to survival, essentially. I think survival comes top of your thinking out, having never done this before. It's super rational, super sort of, let's get this sorted.
Well, that was not quite what we bargained for this afternoon. No.
When you're faced with a casualty like that, where potentially they could have life-changing or life-threatening injuries, you've got a job to do, and you've had the training, and you get on and do it.
When somebody's in their moment of need, being able to help them and being able to bring those people back to safety and being able to be part of that process is incredibly rewarding.
Today, the lion's share of call-outs are to leisure users.
We'll pull you off the rocks and we'll sort you out from there, okay?
But when the lifeboats were first launched 190 years ago, their bread and butter work was rescuing commercial craft and fishermen.
We'll just put an iron end of that to fit over that timber head. OK?
Flamborough in North Yorkshire has had a fishing fleet since the 13th century, with open-top fishing cobbles launching from 2 bays either side of a huge weather-beaten bluff, Flamborough Head.
One side of the headland can be rough seas, unpredictable waves, complete carnage, where the other side will be flat calm and there'll be no waves at all. It's really, really strange.
Since 2009, an Atlantic-class inshore lifeboat has been based on the sheltered South Landing, nearly 2 miles from the rugged North Bay.
We have a big difference between the South Bay and the North Bay. Because we're so well protected by the headland to the north, we don't really get a lot of big seas within the bay.
Working these seas is a risky business. The seabed is littered with the wrecks of thousands of boats lost off this stretch of coast over the years. One incident in the early 20th century affected the local community more than most.
In 1909, the fishing fleet of Flamborough set sail. It was a relatively fine morning when they left. North Landing was the main fishing beach, really, of Flamborough at that time. So they set their lines to the west of North Landing and to the east of North Landing. The weather changed suddenly. A ferocious sea from the north came in. The boats that had gone to the east of North Landing, they made it round into Bridlington Bay. But the boats that had gone to the west of North Landing, as they came back into shore, they were greeted by breaking waves. You know, the waves were just overpowering for the boats.
The fishing boats, the Gleaner and the 2 brothers, capsized on the rocks off North Landing.
At that time, Flamborough had 2 lifeboats, and on the day of the disaster, both boats were launched with extra rowers to try and save the men in the water, but unable to get to them, just by the ferocity of the sea.
All 6 of the men on the fishing boats lost their lives that day, including Stuart's great-grandfather.
At that time, every family in Flamborough was probably a fisherman or something to do with fishing. So it was a sad day for the whole of the fishing community on this coast.
In October, the seas here can be at their most unpredictable.
I'd finished work early. I knew there was some surf up the coast. I was going to pick up my gear and go for a surf. But obviously, that took a back seat and I diverted to South Landing.
The lifeboat crew have been paged. Someone's in trouble in the sea at the foot of the cliffs at North Landing.
This was the first time I'd attended a person in the water. It wasn't until I actually turned up at the boathouse that Tom was already on the boat and he said person in the water, and I started to panic a bit.
When called to North Landing, the Flamborough disaster can be subconsciously at the back of your mind, knowing that the conditions can change.
Go after this one. All right, we're right.
For this person to be in North Landing in a northerly sea that time of year was not a good scenario to be going to.
We left that day and it was like a mill pond in the South Bay here. And then as we got to the corner there at the lighthouse, we could see the big northerly swell rolling in.
The waves were very different in both frequency, power and height. If somebody was in the water in conditions like that, unless help arrived to them very quickly or they knew a way out themselves, the chances of survival are very slim.
After an 8-minute dash around Flamborough Head, the crew come into the northerly bay. The Humberside Coast Guard helicopter is already on the scene.
It wasn't until we got to North Landing that we got the confirmation off the Coast Guard that the casualty had got out of the water and climbed into a cave.
Although he's out of the water, the man is far from safe. and could still be swept out by the waves.
We could see this guy in the cave there who was sort of waving at us, but it was a cave that went nowhere. It just went in about 6 feet. And we went in, had a look, and we saw it was all overhung from above.
The cave is only just above sea level, and the overhanging cliff means the helicopter can't winch him out.
When the Coast Guard helicopter told us they couldn't reach a casualty, it definitely upped the ante. The tide was ever rising, and that just meant more water reaching into the cove, which would eventually swill in and out of the cave, pulling him into the water as well.
There is a slight temptation to just think, right, we'll just put the head of the boat to the cliff, get him jump on, and we'll be out of here. But as the tide was pushing in, just got to reflect and stand back for a couple of seconds, actually look at the environment, look at the sea conditions, and think, no, this needs a little bit more planning.
The Coast Guard helicopter stands by above, while Stuart prepares for a manoeuvre known as veering down.
It's a method of laying an anchor rope from the bow out to sea. And then once we have a good strong bite on the seabed, we'll take the boat backwards towards the cliffs.
But in swell this big, attempting to veer down brings its own risks.
Taking the boat sideways into the cliff could damage an engine by hitting a rock, you know, misjudge the casualty getting into the boat and injury to the casualty. We've got engines running at the back with propellers spinning around, you know. That's the last thing he needs to be meeting.
Reversing through the breaking surf, Stuart must time his approach perfectly.
We were very close, but then I just pulled back after seeing a set of waves coming through. So we pulled back, let them pass.
I remember one wave coming over the bow and nearly sweeping me out of the back of the boat. It just flooded the boat. It was pretty scary.
As we were making our attempts at veering down, the casualty kept signalling with his arms, as if he wanted to swim out to us. I was giving him hand gestures. It was like, no, stay there, don't do it, whatever you do.
Despite the crew's warnings, the casualty scrambles down the cliff face. As Stuart finally manages to maneuver the lifeboat near the cave, he suddenly makes his move.
Casualty signalled to his mates on the beach with a bit of a cocky fist pump, and it was like, mate, sit down. You're not in any position to be bursting. Get sat down now.
And Stuart just wanted to get us out of there as quick as he possibly could. So it gave me the order to cut the anchor warp. Just got the knife, cut the warp front of the bow, and then as soon as that was cut, he could motor us out there as quickly as he possibly could.
On the way back to shore, the casualty reveals he'd been visiting the area for the day and was dared to jump off the 100-foot cliff by his friends.
I really do think that they just didn't realise, looking from above, how dangerous that was. And then when he realised, I can't get out of this, I can't swim against this, no one could swim against that. Yeah, he was lucky to get to where he got to.
This shout could have ended badly. If the guy that had jumped in hit a rock or it had been smashed up against the cliff, you know, the outcome could have been very, very different.
I think some people don't realise the position that they've been in. They just see that they've got lucky. You know, they've made it that day, but they haven't taken into consideration that, you know, these 4 people have actually risked their life, and what effort has actually gone into recovering somebody who's done such a stupid act.
He was taken upstairs in the boathouse where he was warmed up, and I think he was told in there a few times of how not to behave on the coast.
Across the country, lifeboat crews and lifeguards are always on hand to help when the great British public end up all at sea.
I mean, there are some crazy people out there doing some crazy things.
Whoa!
I think people see it as a bit of a playground.
Do you want to pass the kids up?
I think it's just the general British public, isn't it? It's who we are as people. We like a good time and don't think of the risks before we do it, usually.
Hey, old fella! What are you doing out here?
They sort of buy these boats off eBay or whatever, and they go out there having no clue whatsoever.
We have the casualty safely on board in a small £10 dinghy, no safety equipment.
And it's not just the tourists. We get things from broken down boats, boats that haven't been serviced through the winter or stood through the winter.
It's still got the same petrol in it from last year. Unbeknown to a lot of people, petrol does go off.
We try to be non-judgmental when we come across people. Yeah, people get into trouble, but we tend to give people advice rather than judge their mistakes.
Sorry, guys. That's all right, it's not a problem. I feel like such a prat.
Some people are quite embarrassed coming in, dented pride, but at the end of the day, someone has to do it, they were in trouble. So we're more than happy to help.
Lying on the coast of South Wales is the small seaside town of Porthcawl.
OK, I'm going to go up there and drop the engine down.
The crew here are the second busiest in the region, launching into the Bristol Channel 86 times last year alone.
Coastline here is particularly tricky. We've got a lot of shallow patches, sandbanks, rocks, and we get big surf as well, so you kind of got a mixed bag here.
One of the most dangerous parts of their patch are the cliffs of the Ogmore Deeps.
It's probably one of the most popular fishing places in the area, you know. It's perfectly flat rocks to fish off. It's just a bit treacherous getting there, you know.
This stretch of rocky coast attracts fishermen from all over the country.
Ogmore Deeps is a beautiful place. It's a very popular place and a place that is lovely to be. It's just a place that, when it goes wrong, it will go very wrong.
A warm August day. The lifeboat station receives an emergency call.
RDC, round on the rocks.
OK.
We were coming back from a tasking, so we were on the lifeboat already when we were requested to launch and assist with a man who had fallen from a cliff. And that was about all the information we had.
The casualty is over 2 miles away on the Hardy's Bay side of the Deeps.
When it comes through as a faller at Ogmore Deeps, there's no beach there. It's just all rocks and cliff faces. So when they come through, we know that it's going to be kind of be a bad one, you know.
The terrain there is particularly tricky. It's needle-sharp rocks, and then they're leading up to cliff face. People die when it goes wrong at Ogmore Deeps.
The crew have been told that the man fell while fishing and has a possible spinal injury.
As soon as you hear the words spinal injury, you know that's potentially life-changing. And that's when you know that every decision that you make could have a lasting effect on that person. That really, really, really piles on the pressure.
Yeah. Land Maintenance 06, Porthcawl Lifeboat.
After a 6-minute sprint to the scene, the crew spot the casualty on the cliff top.
Lifeboat, for information, if you head Witches Point side of the deep,
The crew need to get to the casualty with first aid equipment as quickly as possible. But the swell and the rocky shore make it too dangerous to get the Atlantic in any closer.
Martin.
Yeah.
B. Yeah. And Kitty. You want me to go as well?
3 crew members, B, Chris and Martin, must now swim to the rocky shoreline in breaking surf with a 7-foot-long 10-kilo stretcher and 2 first aid kits.
To make a decision that affects a casualty is one thing. To make a decision that could potentially affect the safety of your own crew, that's another. And you've got to be able to go home each night and know that you've done the right thing.
Watch yourself, boys. Drop there.
Not getting a stretch off, no?
B.
B.
Have you got a radio?
Yeah.
It's only a 12-metre swim, but the crew are soon battling a big sea swell and strong currents.
It's not easy at all. It's a lot of kit. Even the life jacket when you're trying to swim can be pretty restrictive, so trying to swim in the surf with a first aid kit and a stretcher is pretty hard work, yeah.
Reaching land, B, Chris and Martin now have to scale a 10-metre high cliff face in full kit.
It only takes one slip and you back off the rocks, and you know the tide is pretty strong and you could end up 100 metres down the beach within a couple of seconds, you know, so yeah, it's pretty risky business.
Reaching the top of the cliff face, they find the casualty.
Hello, sir. How are you? My name's Martin. What's that? Pain. Whereabouts the pain? Top of my back. Top of my back. He's had a fall, landing on his head. Okay.
The casualty has fallen backwards down a rocky escarpment and can't move his back or neck.
Okay. No problem. Just keep nice and still for us. Just stay nice and still, okay? We'll sort the rest out now.
It was clear that he'd fallen from a distance. He's an elderly chap, and to fall the distance he'd fallen, in the area he'd fallen, was quite clearly going to do damage.
Can you get the first aid kit and the casualty check card? Porthcawl lifeboat, Porthcawl lifeboat mobile. Lifeboat mobile, lifeboat, go ahead. Yeah, casualty has head injury and suspect spinal.
When we arrive at a situation where you've got a casualty with potentially life-changing injuries, and it's just you and your crew, it can be a lonely place.
He's fallen approximately 40 feet. We're just going to start casualty care.
You can look left, you can look right. There's no help coming for a little while, so you've got to make do with what you've got.
Is the pain getting worse, or is it staying the same? Getting worse. It's getting worse. Okay. Roger. Confirm that the casualty has fallen 40 feet.
With an injury like this, the crew can't risk stretchering the casualty down the rocks to the lifeboat. An ambulance is on its way to the top of the cliffs.
I can't turn my head.
Oh, well, don't do it then.
For us now, all right? That's it.
There you go.
The crew believe he may have broken his neck.
Chris's role was to hold the head, which is essentially the most important job at that time.
This was my first spinal injury, shall we, so yeah, there's a fair amount of pressure with a casualty like that, you know. I mean, it's kind of on us, you know, if you only got to move them half an inch, you know, and you can cause some serious damage, you know, so yeah, we just got to keep them really still until we can extract them.
Ambulances are directly above. All good, do you need to know about?
10 minutes after the lifeboat arrives, the Coast Guard and ambulance make it to the cliff top. But there's no road access down to the rocks.
Yeah, they're not going to find us, so I'm going to go up to the road.
Roger. Paramedics are at the top there, coming down. Just to reassure you, they're on their way now, okay?
Help! Help!
After a 15-minute search, B finally locates the paramedics and the Coast Guard.
So he's fallen around about 30 to 40 feet. He's complaining of excruciating pain down his neck, towards his back.
Don't move. Try and keep as still as you can, mate. Deep breaths.
Right.
Hey, doing all right?
How far we got? Right.
Just my shoulders, my arms.
Okay, just nice and still. And
Ow!
Oh, pain there. Yeah. It's going down.
Yeah. Ah, that's it there.
Okay. Yeah, he's got central pain, yes. We've got a copper collar on him, guys.
Assessing the casualty, the paramedics decide his injuries are too serious to stretcher him up the cliffs to the road.
Every time he moved, he was screaming in agony. Yeah, so yeah, he was the potential of too much risk of injury. So it was at that point we called for medical evacuation via the chopper.
The Coast Guard helicopter has been scrambled and soon arrives on the scene. To get him safely to hospital, the casualty must be winched up to the helicopter while moving him as little as possible. To minimize the movement, the pilot hovers low above the rocks and the emergency crews.
Luckily, I'd done a few training operations with the helicopter beforehand, so I was pretty comfortable underneath the chopper, but it still gets pretty gnarly underneath that chopper when it's 10 foot above you.
The casualty was flown to hospital in Cardiff, where they discovered he'd fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck.
When you've got somebody with spinal injuries, there's a massive weight of responsibility. If we got it wrong, it would have catastrophic effects on the casualty.
One of the fractured vertebrae was millimeters from severing the spinal cord. But the speed of the emergency services response prevented any further damage.
You can be having the worst day, the worst work day, the worst whatever day. You go out there, help a casualty, get them extracted away, and get them into safety. You've got a buzz for a good 12, 24 hours. Yeah, there's no other feeling like it.
We're behind. We're going. And you're holding it? No, you're meant to hold it. Keep going. I'm going.
To know that you've made a difference to somebody, to know that you've helped and done the best you can, really does give a sense of satisfaction.
Get on, get on, get on, get on.
All of us, we just all want to help people, basically. We all absolutely love the water, and we're kind of not happy unless we're out at sea helping people out.
A 150 miles away on the south coast, where the River Adur meets the English Channel, Shoreham Lifeboat Station is set within a working harbour.
We have a pretty busy port, so there's a fair few commercial fishermen. We've also got a lot of leisure activity. We've got jet skis, kayakers, sailing clubs. I think we've got pretty much every possible use of the sea being utilised here.
Thursday night at Shoreham is station cleaning night. And it's the newer recruits who have to shoulder the dirty work. 18-year-old Isabelle is one of the youngest members of the crew.
As soon as I turned 17, I joined the lifeboat. I followed in my dad's footsteps. So yeah, the 3rd generation.
Isabelle's dad, Simon, also known as Tuggy, is a second coxswain here.
Hello, babe.
All right. Yeah.
You all done?
Yeah.
Well done. I'll write out to you, please.
While her grandfather, Jeff, was a crew member for 41 years.
Oh, yeah, I'll clean Granddad's flat for him.
Yeah.
Quick, join up.
My mum and dad always knew that I was going to join up. I was always very keen. There wasn't an option. I was always going to join the lifeboat and follow in my family footsteps. They're like my second family, the crew, and they'll look after me because they've seen me grow up.
When not on cleaning duty, Isabelle is studying for her A-levels.
This is the staff car park that I'm allowed to park in. I'm the only student that's allowed to park here because if my pager goes off, it allows me to leave quicker.
As well as her parking privileges, Isabelle's also allowed to have certain mobile devices out in class.
I genuinely do love it when you go off. You literally look like a superhero. When we were in the common room, you literally took your pager out, looked at it, grabbed your stuff and was like, I have to go, and you ran.
A cold April evening. A call comes in. A man has been sighted struggling in the water in the mouth of the River Adur. Isabelle is one of the first volunteers to arrive.
I remember running in and the helm telling me to get kitted up, and the adrenaline started pumping. I don't think I've ever got kitted up so quick in my life.
I decided to take Isabelle on the shout because I felt it would be a good experience, and an extra pair of eyes when you're searching for someone is never a bad thing. If I'd known a bit more about the job we were going to when we launched, then that would have changed my decision.
5 minutes after the call comes in, Shoreham's inshore lifeboat launches into the darkness and heads upriver.
There's definitely a small window of opportunity to find someone conscious when you first launch for the person in the water. Obviously, the longer they're there, the worse their condition's going to get if they can't get themselves out or someone else can't get there before us.
Water temperatures in the river are below 6 degrees. The crew may only have minutes to find the man before he succumbs to cold and shock.
It's pretty hard to spot a person in the river. I mean, there's lots of little bits of buoyage and stuff like that, and rubbish that could be misinterpreted for a person. At the end of the day, you're only looking for someone's head. So it's like trying to spot a football in the dark, really.
This is Isabelle's first shout to a person in the water.
I do worry sometimes what the job is, and I do worry if I'm going to be able to cope with it, as I am quite young. I do worry if I'll be up to it and be able to do it. There is a lot of questions running through my head.
When you've got a fairly young crew member, you kind of have to sort of keep one eye on them. Not to make sure they're doing their right job, because they are most of the time, but just to be a little bit more concerned about their well-being.
3 minutes after launching, they spot a struggling figure clinging to the riverbank.
Okay, mate. All right, mate. You're okay. It's all right. Don't worry. Calm. Be calm. It's cool. Yeah, but just give us a second. We'll come and get you. Where have you come from, mate?
Go round from there.
Okay.
When we came up to him, he was pretty incoherent, he was moaning, clearly drunk, and when we got close, we could see he had blood all over his face.
Jack, we're here to help you. I just need to make
gloves out of here, please.
Put my own mind up. How have you ended up in here? Have you got anything on you that could harm us in any way?
He didn't speak particularly fluent English, so it was quite difficult to establish communication with him. My main concern was how he'd ended up in the water and why he was covered in blood. I was trying to ask whether he posed a threat to us or whether he had anything that might hurt us on his person, but he didn't really understand, so he didn't answer.
Yeah, okay, mate.
Deciding the risks to the man is greater than the danger he may pose to them. The crew attempt to get him on board.
How long have you been in the water, chap?
You speak Russian, maybe? Don't speak Russian.
No.
I remember trying to talk to him and trying to keep him calm. When they're drunk, cold and in shock, you can never predict how they're going to be. It does worry me if they're going to get aggressive, because I'm not the biggest of persons.
My friend, my boat.
Terry's really distressed. He was obviously quite intoxicated. You don't see it on a day-to-day basis. As a trainee, I would have been a bit unnerved, I think.
Hello, my friend, because my...
Your friend?
You, yeah.
Is anyone else in the water?
Yeah.
Yes. Kenzie, there's someone else in the water, mate. Is there? Yeah, there's someone else in the water.
That's me.
So let's get that searchlight in the river.
You never want to hear that there's another person missing when you've just found the one person that you've gone there to find, because obviously you've potentially gone at the same time, so that amount of time that you've spent rescuing that first person has already lapsed for that second person.
We'll be clear, there is one person unaccounted for.
Very crazy.
Keep scanning all the way down this wall. Where is your boat? Looking down these bits.
My boat is going... Red boat, red.
Red sailing boat.
This guy then started to describe they were on a red sailing ship, so we're headed up the river.
As well, right, there's a boat right on the bow. That's not really right. That shouldn't be there.
The boat was pretty much in the middle of the channel. That was pretty unusual for us, so that's why we gathered that it was their boat fairly quickly.
Yeah, my boat. Okay. My boat.
Okay, chill out.
Where's boy?
I think I can see. No, there's not. No.
It's the right boat, but there are no signs of life on board.
Where is my boat?
As we got close, we shone a light actually into the cabin. You could see somebody actually lying down in the cabin. That person wasn't in the water. It does not mean he's safe and well. We were hitting on the window and trying to get his attention, and we weren't getting any response from him whatsoever. So we were thinking the worst.
Crew member Chrissy goes aboard to check on the unmoving figure inside.
Yeah, and then we'll come back for this.
When I opened the door, I could smell there was a lot of alcohol involved. He was snoring quite loudly. I was pretty convinced he was asleep.
Hello, Jack. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? He's completely out, he's completely unconscious. He's completely unconscious.
The deck was awash with alcohol. There was a few tinnies lying about. There was scotch, vodka, that sort of thing. They'd obviously had a good pie.
Wakey, wakey! Wakey, wakey, come on!
I was doing my best to wake him up. It wasn't really happening. I was tempted to chuck a bucket of water over him, but I don't think that would have done a lot of good anyway.
I need you to wake up, mate. Come on. Let's go.
We'd heard afterwards that after having an all-day drinking session whilst out on the boat, these guys had come back up the river and the engine stopped, and they then proceeded to have an argument about who was meant to put the fuel in the engine. That argument turned into fisticuffs, and apparently the guy that we'd found in the river had actually jumped to try and get away from his mate. Yeah, apparently that's what happened. Turned out they didn't run out of fuel. They had a line around the prop, but they were not in a state to recognise that.
Let's go, mate! Wake up! Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? You all right? Can you hear me? You okay? You okay? Your friend? We've just pulled your friend out of the water.
Drinking boats is always a bit of a recipe for disaster. It happens time and time again. People are normally quite grateful when you go to them. But this chap was enjoying his sleep and he was a bit annoyed that I woke him up.
The two casualties were handed over to the police and Coast Guard. They retrieved their boat from the lifeboat station the next day.
It's quite comical in how it unfolded and how we found the people and the guy on the boat and the fact he didn't want to get woken up. I knew that crew was looking out for me and looking after me, and I think it was a good experience for me, and this will be a one that I always remember and never forget as I go through my career on the lifeboat.
I think for one of your first shouts, that was definitely an interesting and slightly challenging situation to be in. She seemed pretty unfazed by everything, really. I think she thought it was quite funny. With a father like Tuggy, Isabelle's going to be made of pretty tough stuff.
In Porthcawl, the summer holidays are well underway, with over 100,000 holidaymakers flocking to the town.
Tourism brings on the silly season. We definitely get an influx of shouts. We can get shouts from missing kids, blow-up dinghies being blown out to sea, even people buying boats and just going for it. We attract every type of seagoing person. You've got surfers, kayakers, fishermen. We get people cut off by the tide.
People go out on a sunny day, walk into areas that aren't covered with water, and within 10-15 minutes the tide comes in and you're not getting back where you came from because there's water there where it wasn't before.
May is the beginning of the lifeboat station's busiest season. Multiple 999 calls have come into the Coast Guard. Two teenage boys are in trouble. Within minutes, Porthcawl's D-class lifeboat is launched.
Once we got headed out across the bay, we got onto contact with the Coast Guard, asked for any more information.
What we got, kid there? New point. Kid stuck on new point.
Two boys have been spotted stranded on a rock just off a nearby headland.
I'm assuming you're on those rocks just off the point there.
Newton Point is around 1.5 miles from the station. It's not a particularly good place to be cut off. There's quite a lot of rocks, outcrops, shallows. I was kind of dreading, really, getting in and around and being able to manoeuvre the boat in there.
Today is one of the highest tides of the year. The sea is set to rise nearly 10 metres in 6 hours.
Go around and come in between the rocks, got it?
In these conditions, vicious rip currents will sweep anyone trying to swim ashore straight out to sea.
There's probably around 4 to 5 knots of tide that day. If the tide comes in and sweeps them off a rock, the potential then is for them to drown, be washed out to sea.
With a
front of the rock and I'll try and pick them up on this. If they're in the water, just go straight in, right?
We need to get in there and get the job done sooner rather than later.
Do you reckon it went round this way to do cutting?
Just over 3 minutes after launching, the D-class arrives at Newton Point.
Milford, Porthcawl LB, Sidrepse, currently on scene. Found the two teenagers cut off. Just assessing now the best evacuation system. Over.
We saw the two casualties perched on top of the rock. We could see that it was completely surrounded by water, but there's actually rocks on the south end of where they were, so there's no way of us getting in that way, so we had to go into the bay.
I'm not happy about that swell in there.
This one by as well.
The two boys are only 25 metres from shore, but the rising tide has brought big surf, which is breaking over submerged rocks all around them.
Right, boys, I want one of you to get the oar out, just to get ready with the depth, yeah?
To make matters worse, the water's only around half a metre deep on this side of the rock.
The pressure of being a helm really is obviously you don't want to stick yourself or your crew in more danger. The main potential for us was capsize the vessel. This would put us 3 crew members in the water then.
Just keep my depth going.
They're only 10 metres from the boys, but large waves are now breaking all around them.
I had a chat with the crew, told them what we were going to do. We were going to head in. It was going to be a little bit dangerous.
See a second through sledge.
Dan must wait for a gap in the set and time his approach perfectly.
Hold on then, boys, hold on. Ready then, boys?
Go for it. All right then, boys.
All right.
As soon as we got that bow onto the rock, a wave came from the side and knocked us off the rock.
Hold on, boys.
That put us in a not the best situation. Once we went back to sitting in the middle of the gully where we were, waiting for the waves to calm down.
With the spring tide flooding in, the water's rising fast. It won't be long before the boys are swept off the rock.
The worst case scenario is you can't get the casualties. You may be able to see the casualties, but you physically can't do anything for them because it means putting yourself and your crew at risk.
They were very challenging conditions. It wasn't a big swell, but it was the kind of swell that if you weren't looking, it would catch you out. So that's when it turned into a snatch and grab and kind of get in there and get out as quick as possible.
Kidney, what I'm going to do, get you off, I'm going back in, right? Get ready to jump off. I'm going back out there, ready boys? It's going to be a bump, but we're going to do it. Go!
Give me a sec. Colin, come on, let's go. Colin, mate, quick. Sit down, sit down.
There was no time for messing about. I jumped off the boat onto the rock, got hold of the boys, spun the boat around and got back out of there within probably 30 seconds.
Hold on.
There was no more time than that. Alright? Yeah, man. I'm Chris. What's your name? What's it? Alright, you need to put it on, mate.
18-year-olds Mitchell and Christian had come from Newport for the weekend.
Me and Chris went to the beach and we seen a rock, so we just thought, well, we needed a place to sit down and relax for a bit, and we thought that'd be the nicest place to be.
You alright, mate?
We were just there trying to have a good time. We didn't really think anything too much about the weather and the water, especially not a tide coming in and trapping us on a rock.
Who ran the Coast Guard? Did you ring them or?
Shout. 12 Newton downs, eh?
Let's go into Newton, are we?
Yeah, we're going to go straight Newton, yeah?
It was really far out, like not close to us at all, so we thought we was all right. And then it come up to our feet within like 45 minutes. We like, oh, it's too close now.
Didn't realise how quick a tide comes in. It's quick, isn't it?
We sat on one side of the rock and like we thought that one side was going to pick up like one and like look, it was all coming.
Fast, isn't it?
His mum rang, and this is the point where we're actually trapped on the rock, and he was like, oh no, we're fine, no trouble at all. We'll be back soon, thinking that the tide was going to go out. And then he messages his mum, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's something on the lines of, I love you, we're going to die, we're trapped on a rock.
What we're going to do, guys, we're going to put you on the beach. There's like a Coast Guard team come. They'll just have a little chat with you and probably take you back to the caravan and or wherever you want to go. Like, they'll sort you out.
Before they was going to go mad at us when we got on the boat, and but they were actually really nice. Like, they just asked if we're okay. Like, they didn't seem the slightest bit angry about it. Like, so it was a relief. I was like, yes, like, whew, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get wet. I'm good. Like.
No, I'll try and get you on the beach now, mate. I'll try and keep it dry, yeah?
They dropped us to shore, and they asked us to walk. And me and Chris said that there could be a problem with that. I was wearing my Versace jacket at the time, and I was thinking, it's not going to be a good thing for us to go out there in the water and get drenched.
Jump on the back, is it? Hi, mate.
They had their top-of-the-range trainers on, so they didn't want to get them wet, so Sam and Chris gave them piggybacks. Part of the service we provide, try and help out as much as we can.
Yeah, the Coast Guard are coming down, they literally just going to...
And literally just give you a lift back,
Even if you do get yourself into a sticky situation, you know, that they could have helped, we're still not there to judge them. We're there to offer a helping hand, you know?
Nice little shelter.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's been a year since the collision in Torbay. After 3 operations and over 10 hours of surgery, James is now back on his feet.
I was very surprised at how my leg came back. So May to August, I could move around. I didn't push it, but equally, I didn't sort of just stay all covered up and worried about things. I thought, well, I'll have a go. The doctor said it's okay, let's see what happens.
It's been amazing what they did and how well he's healed. And, you know, that he can go for a walk. Yes, he gets tighter than he did before, but, you know, it's incredible.
The lifeboat saved my life. The air ambulance getting me there quickly saved my leg, and the doctors in Derriford. I do feel eternally grateful and lucky for that lot to exist.
It was awful to hear. They were so scared. They couldn't hear us shouting to them.
There's absolutely zero point trying to hide, my friend. I know you're there.
He thought we were the police, and he was a little bit scared of the repercussions.
She was a big girl, and it dawned on me what kind of a rescue this was.